Um, and we'll start the recording. Okay, welcome everyone to Dev Dives. On today's session, we have accelerating agentic automation with Autopilot for everyone. Today's agenda is the same. We have a few slides at the beginning. We have a live demo and a cool Q&A at the end. Until then, I hope you will ask your questions in the chat so we can keep a clean recording and a clean event. You'll receive the recording, useful links, and deck via your email tomorrow. Until the live Q&A, where I will let you guys open your mics. You can ask the questions in the chat, and then at the live Q&A, you can ask Tuan directly. Because now that I introduced him, he's our speaker for today, and he will start presenting the new capabilities and exciting features of Autopilot for everyone. Before we get started, if anyone wants to, I will invite you to connect together to do some networking in the chat. So everyone, tell us where you are from, and you can leave your LinkedIn. I will leave mine as well. And while we are doing that, I will let Tuan start his session. So thanks for listening to me.
Perfect. Thanks, Mihai. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so hi everyone, my name is Tuan Nguyen. I'm Principal Product Manager here at UiPath. I'm the product lead for Autopilot for Everyone, as well as our conversational agents, which are coming in 25.8 and 25.10. So really excited to be here. Wanted to walk you through Autopilot for Everyone. I know some of you are new to the product, so I wanted to give everyone a high-level overview and a walkthrough of the product, even if you haven't necessarily been acquainted with it. This session will be focused on the 25.4 release. So we'll look at some of the new features there, but I will walk through all the features just so that you have full grasp of the platform and product end to end. So for the agenda today, I wanted to walk for about 20 minutes through Autopilot for Everyone Web. It's a little bit longer because I'm going to go through all the features from top to bottom. As part of the 25.4 release, you'll see that we have a new revamped landing page. We have Action Center integration, and we have a new connection management module in our settings. After that, we'll go through specialized autopilots for 10 minutes. And then I'll go through some of the changes in our admin experience, including the admin settings if you've never seen them before. Last but not least, I'll save some time for Q&A at the very end. Go ahead and provide your questions throughout the session. I'll be sure to answer them at the very end. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm a huge fan of actually just walking through the features and using it in real time to demonstrate some of the things that we're looking at, okay? And then I'll switch back over at the very end of each of our segments to kind of recap what we've seen. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. Really quickly, for those of you who aren't familiar with Autopilot for Everyone, basically Autopilot for Everyone is our conversational AI agent that's out of the box that allows you to interact with the UiPath platform. You can do things like recommend and run automations on your behalf that are available through the assistant and follows our governance and management structures that are already populated and propagated throughout our platform. We've also integrated Clipboard AI directly into Autopilot for Everyone, so you can have semantic, intelligent copy-paste operations directly within the chat interface. It contains contextual information about the conversations that you've had, so you can have long-form conversations that will allow you to construct and develop your ideas through a single chat. You can upload files and images, which will allow you to use LLM-based vision as well as our document understanding capabilities to analyze those documents and files. And last but not least, after every response, there is a suggestion as to follow up, and you can actually influence how those suggestions are generated. And of course, all of these things work across your entire enterprise app ecosystem because you're able to leverage the full capabilities of the UiPath platform. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So here I have an Automation Cloud account opened up. What you will do first, if you want to utilize Autopilot for Everyone, you want to go into your admin console, go into AI Trust Layer. There's a Autopilot for Everyone tab here, and then go ahead and select your build. Here you can see the only thing that you need to have enabled on your tenant is document understanding. There's some other things that you'll need to configure on the other side, which is personal workspaces, ensuring you have an assistant that's later than 24.10.5, and then ensuring that the user who wants to access Autopilot Everyone has a valid license type. Okay, and then you just click Install Autopilot for Everyone. If you're familiar with our solutions product, basically what happens on the back end is we pull down an autopilot solution and we install it in your orchestrator. So after you install Autopilot for everyone and you go into your orchestrator, you'll see a new Autopilot solution. And in that Autopilot solution is just some key processes that we install on your behalf. One is the Autopilot process. One is a process that's made for Mac, as well as an FAQ automation that can be ran at runtime to provide additional information about Autopilot, and then just Google and Wikipedia data retrieval automations, which will help you pull information from these two sources. You can remove them if you'd like. We just provide them there because they're fairly useful and have a high utility. Okay, these are required for Autopilot for everyone to work. So after you've installed them, then you can actually access Autopilot for everyone. So if you're in our cloud.uipath.com environment, we've actually made a very easy to remember URL that you can use to access Autopilot for everyone, which is just assistant.uipath.com. And once you've gone to that URL, it'll redirect you to our assistant web interface where Autopilot for everyone is available. All right, so you can see it loading up here. And so you can see here, after I've installed Autopilot for everyone, I'll get this new Autopilot tab. It'll load up Autopilot, and then I'll be able to chat with it. For your first run experience, it'll ask you to populate this information, your role, your department, your location. This will actually be included in the system prompt for Autopilot for everyone to make your responses or recommendations more relevant to who you are. Okay. So after I provide that information, I click next, and then I would go to the page itself. All right. So now I'm going to switch back over to my staging environment because that's where everything's set up. And I'm going to show you how you could access Autopilot for everyone through the UI. So you just go here in your automation cloud environment, go to the assistant, and then it loads up just the same. So two different ways that you can access it. You can go through automation cloud, click on assistant from the navigation, or you can go to your URL, just type assistant.uipath.com, and it will redirect you directly to Autopilot for everyone. All right, so here's an environment that I have loaded up with plenty of information. I'm going to walk you through each of the functionality really quickly. You'll see here that if you are familiar with Autopilot for everyone previous to 25.4, the UI looks very different. We wanted to revamp the UI, reduce the cognitive load that it was on the user, and make the chat itself front and center. So as you can see here, we brought the chat box front and center. You have some starting prompts here that you can utilize. So these starting prompts will actually populate into the prompt itself, right? This helps with the blank canvas problem that a lot of users run into, and you can customize these starting prompts as you like. You can also save them, right? And they'll actually be added to this saved group right here. Okay. Here you can create different categories and departments of starter prompts. So there's a lot of things you can do with the starter prompts that really help you get moving from the blank canvas problem. On the right-hand side here, you'll see our Action Center integration. So any Action Center tasks that are assigned to you will appear here, right? And so when I click on this task, it'll take me over to this task tab, which is an embedded Action Center module, and you can actually complete your Action Center tasks here, right? In the future, we'll also allow you to pull these tasks directly into the chat themselves. You can converse with them and complete them through natural language. All right, and you'll see in just a bit, once that task is completed, this should disappear. There we go. Okay, and so this is kind of the first iteration towards our proactive assistant, right? So a lot of assistants out there today, you have to type a message and then it responds to you. What we want to gravitate towards is a more proactive kind of interaction. And so we know that much of the time you're reacting to a lot of things throughout your day, whether it's an email coming in from someone else or a request. So we want to utilize Action Center to pipe in those requests, and then you can utilize Autopilot for everyone as kind of your one-stop shop to be able to handle all those requests in an automated fashion. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the functionality in Autopilot for everyone. So for those of you who are very familiar with Autopilot for everyone, this will be a refresher. But for those of you who aren't, I just want to walk through the things that Autopilot for everyone can do. So first and foremost, Autopilot for Everyone can handle LM-based instructions just like anything else that you've seen probably out there when it comes to conversational agents. So if I type something like, hey, right, it doesn't need to run any tools like automations, context grounding to answer that. It has the ability to answer this with LLM trained knowledge. So you can use Autopilot for Everyone to generate lists, synthesize ideas, right? Brainstorm with it. It's very good at that. And it doesn't need to have any tools to be able to do that. So I said, hey, here, responded to me with information about Autopilot for Everyone, as well as some suggested prompts that it can help you with, right? The other thing that Autopilot for Everyone can do is help with image and file analysis. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up this folder here. I'm going to drag in a picture of myself, right? And I'm going to say, tell me about this photo. All right, so I was gonna upload a picture of myself. As you can see, it's a very old picture of me because I look much younger then. But when you upload an image to Autopilot for Everyone, it's gonna send it over to LLM Vision. We use Claude 3.5 Sonnet on the back end. And then it's gonna run it through with this prompt. And the prompt itself is describe this image in detail, including text, objects, people, or notable features. And then it applies that prompt that I have here telling me about this photo to the information that was returned. Okay. If you were to upload, let's say, a PDF or a text file, we would send that information over to Document Understanding, extract out all the text, provide it back into context, and then it would analyze that file. So here's the information that Autopilot for Everyone was able to tell me about this file. So it's really helpful when you, let's say, take screenshots of invoices or other things that you want to be able to analyze and send it back. The key thing here is, as you can see, there's no text here, so it actually has information, and it's able to understand, let's say, visual photos or images, not just text-based images, right? All right, so the next thing I want to show you, as you can see, so you can do general LLM-based queries, you can upload files and analyze them. The next thing you can do, and I think this is really powerful, is in Autopilot for Everyone, you can actually query context grounding indexes. So if you're not familiar with context grounding, it's our vector search RAG Q&A platform. So you can go into Orchestrator, create a storage bucket, and then upload your files, create an index for those files, and then those indexes will be available across the UiPath platform to search, right? So you can have a context grounding query activity in your workflow, and you can search that index or return back chunks of information, and then you can utilize it in your workflow, right? In Autopilot for Everyone, you can make that index available to Autopilot, and then you can actually query it. So what I've done here is I've uploaded all of the Autopilot for Everyone documentation into a context ground index so that I can search it in chat. So if I ask something like, tell me about Autopilot for Everyone's licensing model. All right, and so you'll see here analyzing your request. Every time I send a prompt, it's basically thinking about, okay, what does the user want to do? How do I answer this prompt? Sometimes it can answer it with no tools. Sometimes you use a tool to analyze an image. Here, it's basically made a determination to search the context grounding index, okay? And it's now pulling down the information from that document and then returning it back in user-friendly format to me. So here's the license types that are applicable, the licensing plans, the entitlements, and the availability, right? Here's some restrictions for the express license type, and then here's some prerequisites. And then all this information, once it's been generated, you can actually verify by clicking on the citation link at the very bottom, which will open up a PDF viewer directly to that page. Well, let's see. Doesn't look like it wants to play nice today. Well, it would open up a PDF viewer normally. Let's see if we can go into another chat and get that working. But as you can see here, it's super helpful. The core thing to remember here is context grounding. When you think about vector databases, it's going to return back chunks of information from the index that you've created. So sometimes queries like summarize this entire 100-page document for me doesn't work too well. It's more of like a lookup and understand type of approach. So it's much better for those type of use cases. All right, and so now we've gone through three different types of queries and functionality that Autopilot for Everyone can support: general LLM-based queries, file analysis, and context grounding queries. The next one I want to take a look at is actually how do you run an automation in Autopilot for Everyone? So as you can see here, I have a bunch of automations that are available, data sources. So data sources are automations that I've set to be data retrievals, right? So I want them to be run automatically, as well as the automations themselves, right? So these are automations that are being displayed to me that I want to confirm before running. So I have a bunch of automations in here. I'll show you in just a bit how you can install those with one click. But what we're going to do is we're going to just ask, what's on my calendar tomorrow? All right, and so I've already set up an integration service connection for Outlook, and so it's going to go ahead and run a get Outlook events automation automatically. I've set it up as a data source. Oh, okay, here is this PDF viewer that was somewhat slow. That's why I came through now. Um, and as you can see here, I've set this automation to be a data source automation, so it's going to run automatically on my behalf with the arguments for the automation automatically inferred, right? It's inferred based upon the context and intent of your query. So here is the contents of the events for tomorrow that I have. All right. So that information has been populated already. So this is the example of a data source automation. So it runs automatically, infers, and then after it runs, it will populate the information. You can run up to 6 data source automations before returning back information from the user. The way it works is if you ask something and it says, hey, I can answer this with a data source automation, maybe, it will run that automation, take a look at the responses, and then run another automation if it needs to, right? So it can do up to 6 of those before actually responding. We consider context grounding queries as a data source as well. Okay, so I could say something like, can you send a summary of that to, and we also have at referencing already built in to our platform. So in your query, if you press at and then start typing, similar to let's say something like Slack or Teams, you can look at users that are created in your tenant. So let's send a summary of that to Dhruv via email. And what this does is it just basically replaces this at with their actual email. It's fairly important because you don't want to be typing users' emails all the time. If I just said send a summary of that to Dhruv, most likely it would try to infer what his email is and it wouldn't be correct. All right, so it's inferring the calendar event. Here we go. So you'll see here 2 very distinct type of treatments for this automation. This automation ran automatically is because I've set it as a data source automation or a pre-response automation. This automation actually was displayed to me, and the arguments are inferred, but now I actually have to click run to actually execute the automation. So you're able to actually configure how automations are displayed at runtime through our admin console, right? This is super helpful because there are automations where you don't want them to run automatically. Let's say they create something, they delete something, or they update something. You want the user to be able to confirm what that operation is going to be before actually running. So here I have a create Outlook email. It's using the connection I've already set up. And it's gone ahead and inferred all the arguments that I need to run this automation. Okay. And everything looks good to me. I'm going to click run. It's going to run this automation. And then once it's finished, I'll go into my drafts and you should see that pop up just right here. All right, automation successful. Here is that email to Dhruv. I can go in here, verify the contents, modify if I see fit, and press send. Okay, last but not least, I want to show you one other thing. So let's say I also wanted to select this information to Dhruv. Can you also Slack it to Dhruv? Okay, understanding my request. So again, it's going to determine like, hey, I should actually send this with the send Slack email automation. Okay, so the difference between the previous automations and this one is I already had a connection for Outlook already set up, so I was able to utilize those automations right off the bat. If you have an automation that requires a connection to be set up, you will see this connect to the application name, okay? If you click on that, it will walk you through how to set up that connection. So here it's going to use our integration service catalog. I'm going to connect to Slack. Here are the workspaces. right, I'm gonna go ahead and select my Slack workspace. So now my connection has been created. It's going to go back in, rebind this connection, and then be able to allow me to send this automation. And then all I'll do is press run and you're finished. So super helpful in terms of if you don't have a connection set up, it will walk you through setting up the connection. And that is a really good summary of the things that Autopilot for Everyone can do. It seems fairly short. We wanted to keep it straightforward. So again, it's just LLM-based normal queries, content synthesis, generation, and analysis. You can upload files, you can query your context ground indexes, and you can run automations in different ways. So with that quick recap of the functionality, I want to go through really quickly all the other functionalities of Autopilot for Everyone web. So here we have the Autopilot tab. Again, you're going to see this if you have Autopilot for Everyone installed. Otherwise, you'll just see the automation tab. Here is Assistant Web. You can run automations in both an unintended fashion if you wanted to. This is a task tab. You'll see this task tab only if you had Action Center tasks assigned to you previously and you have Autopilot for Everyone installed. Okay. Up here, we have our assistant, our automation cloud preferences. This is actually where you would change either your dark mode, light mode preferences, or the language that you want automation cloud to appear in. And then on the top here, we have assistant preferences. And then if you click install assistant, this will actually help you install the robot and assistant MSI. It's not the full studio MSI. Actually, all you need to run Autopilot for Everyone locally is just the assistant and robot. Okay. And this is the latest LTS version. It's not the latest community version. On the left-hand side here, we have our chat history. So you can see all the chats that I've previously utilized with Autopilot for Everyone. I can click on any of these and it'll take me back to that chat. Okay. You can close the chat history with this hamburger icon. And then up here, we have our specialized autopilots, which I'll walk through in just a bit. You saw me use the new chat button several times throughout this chat already. And then you'll see here that you can upvote or downvote things throughout the chat as well as copy them. Here we have our settings menu. So you saw in the other tenant that I walked through, populate the profile information that actually goes here. So if at any point you want to change that information, we get promoted, you can definitely do so. It will then reroute that information to Autopilot for Everyone in your very next message. The AI translations is a unique feature. So if you change your language to another language that we support, then in the chat itself, when you see messages or automations or even the automations or data sources, we will actually translate those in real time. If those translations don't make sense because they are LLM generated, you can just toggle this off and then we won't try to translate just in time the automation cards or the automations in the data sources or automations tab. Okay. The user notes might be of interest to you. So user notes are ways that you can influence Autopilot for Everyone in any way that you want. Anything that you put in here will be added to the system prompt. So you can say something like response style, and you could say always respond in rhyme. All right, that's automatically saved, so you don't have to click save or anything. And then when you go back into Autopilot for Everyone, the very next chat will actually adhere to those instructions. So if I say, hey, this time, you will see it actually will respond in a rhyme. Okay. So it's a little bit of a contrived demo, but as you can see, you could say like be more business-like, be more informal. Here's some information. Here's an example of how I speak, and it's really helpful when you're trying to generate content. Okay. Just don't forget because sometimes it does apply across the board. Here's our data sources. So these are automations set as pre-response or automations. You can actually toggle these on or off, and again, they will be adhered to, or these configurations will be adhered to for your next message. Here are our automations that will then be displayed and confirmed before running. And then here are our connections. So as I mentioned, all the connections that automations might use will appear here. Any connections you've already created will appear here as well. So it allows you to manage those connections very easily. All right. Developer tools is not something that we have in our cloud environment. You can disregard that. Down here, if you have issues and you want to troubleshoot, you can download the logs and you can just send general feedback, which is provided here as well. All right, so we went through a lot of information. Last but not least, there is some information down here. Terms, privacy policy. Some people have questions about our chat history. You can find that information here as well in part of our documentation. Some caveats about Autopilot for Everyone Web. Cross-platform automations only. So the reason why is because we actually use serverless robots to run automations on Autopilot for Everyone Web, meaning that they don't run on your local machine. So they need to be cross-platform. That means most likely they're going to be API-based only. There's no Clipboard AI access on Autopilot for Everyone Web. You actually have to install the local assistant and robot to access Autopilot for Everyone on the desktop to access Clipboard AI. And then there's no direct image or active window capture buttons here. You'll see that on the desktop as well because we use the local robot to facilitate that. You can still analyze images and files. You just have to drag and drop them in. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open this page. And again, you're just going to see a quick recap of those items. So again, you have a very easy URL to visit. All the automations on Autopilot for Everyone Web use serverless robots. Right now, everyone has per user per month 300 free robot units per month, right? So you can run pretty much 300 times an automation per month before we'll actually start charging you for serverless robots, and you'll need to allocate them to your tenant to continue running automations for, let's say, that particular user, right? As you can see, I assigned an Action Center task to myself and completed it on my behalf. And here's the caveats that we just mentioned right now. All right. So with that being said, let's jump into our next topic, which is specialized autopilots. So if you've used Autopilot for Everyone in previous iterations before 25.4, even in 25.4, you'll notice that it's kind of hard to build, let's say, like an Autopilot for specific purpose. You have to go in the admin, you have to create an instruction set, you have to configure tools, and what you basically get is an autopilot that's focused on your purpose, but you can only build one per tenant, right? So if I wanted, let's say, an autopilot for blood donor intake, I would have to configure an autopilot and maybe a blood donor tenant. And then if I had another one for accounting or invoice processing, I would have to build another one in a different tenant, right? Because you can only have a set of instructions per tenant. And that was somewhat restrictive. People didn't want to create tenants for each autopilot or purpose or use case they had. And so we introduced this concept of specialized autopilots. And that allows you to layer on a set of instructions and tools on top of Autopilot for Everyone, so that all you can have to do in a single tenant is switch between those autopilots and you have a different experience. So as I mentioned, this is the general purpose. Autopilot for Everyone has all the automations and data sources that I've configured for everyone. Let's say I had a specific purpose autopilot for blood donor intake, right? This basically allows, let's say, my users to query guidelines related to blood donation eligibility. And then they get responses and they're able to determine whether or not the individual donor can actually donate blood. Okay, so I can just switch over to the blood donor intake autopilot, and this would be controlled by folder permission. So I created a folder, anyone has access to that folder now has access to this autopilot. So here is the blood donor intake. I can dictate the title, the description. You can see here the starting prompts have changed as well, right? And then in here, in our data sources, now all the other data sources have been removed. I have my blood donation guideline index, okay? And then I've removed all the automations. So this is a very common use case where customers just want to provide a set of standard operating procedures to their users. They want to query them, get the information back, and then continue on their day. So let's say donor has psoriasis and has taken, let's get the medication out of it. Are they able to donate? Right. So it's going to search that context grounding index, and then it's going to return back information for me, right? Although you could have done this all in one autopilot, part of Autopilot for Everyone, doing it this way is going to be much more useful for you just because, LLMs are better when you kind of like segment or narrow the scope of what it can actually do later down the line. And so this is what I would kind of recommend you to do in the future. If you have, like, let's say a very specific use case, create a specialized autopilot for it. configure the instructions, the tools, and then that way, let's say it won't have any ambiguity about what the user's intent is. If I go into this specialized autopilot, Autopilot for everyone already knows that they're going to be trying to query this context grounding index. It doesn't have to think about what it needs to do, right? So here's all the information from that context grounding index. Psoriasis is deferred from donation, right? And then again, I can open up this PDF. Okay, so this one wanted to cooperate with me. So here's the actual citation from the document where that information was pulled from. As a user, I can go in here and verify the information. All right, so that's an example of, let's say, a specialized autopilot for just RAG Q&A, right? In here, I also have another autopilot for invoice processing. You'll see that you can actually switch between autopilots mid-chat and it will actually work. So if I had an autopilot for Outlook and an autopilot for, let's say, presentation preparation, I could start my conversation with the presentation preparation autopilot. And then once I'm done and I want to email to someone, I could switch over to the Outlook autopilot to continue on. In the future, we know that not everyone wants to understand which autopilots you have access to and switch between them, let's say explicitly. We're focusing on building, let's say, a supervisor autopilot or autopilot for everyone who has access to these underlying autopilots and can route your query accordingly. So I want to show you if I go to invoice processing, this particular autopilot allows me to search for invoices, right? Check for purchase orders and email the vendors. The one thing that's unique here is the invoice search itself actually goes and uses UI automation. It uses a window-based project. So you'll see here if I go in here and I look at automations, I have my email automation, but I don't have anything in data sources. And that's because it's actually a Windows-based process. And so we filter out anything that's not cross-platform. So you do have to be careful about this. But if I switch over to my desktop version of Autopilot for Everyone, and I go into invoice processing, you'll see here that I do have this automation search for invoice. And again, that's because it's a Windows-based project. Okay. So let's see how this would work in a desktop version of Autopilot for Everyone. As you can see, it's much more powerful. I have Clipboard AI access here. I can run Windows-based automations with UI. And then I'm able to capture, a screenshot as well as active window here. So let's take a look at this use case here. I have a invoice that's come in from a vendor. This is just an invoice statement. I'm going to go in here into my starting prompts, click on this invoice search, help me search for all the invoices in this statement, and it even has prompted me to upload a file. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop that file directly into Autopilot for Everyone, and I'll kick it off. So previously, we looked at uploading an image. It sent it over to LLM-based vision, returned back the responses and information. This one, actually, I've updated a PDF. And again, if you upload a PDF or a text file, it's going to send it over to Document Understanding, extract out all the text related to that document, send it to the LLM, and then apply your prompt. So here, it's gone ahead and analyzed the information. Now it's opening up the Acme website. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this website. It's logging in on my behalf. It's going to search for the first invoice in that statement. And that's because I've wired up this search for invoice automation and made it available to Autopilot for Everyone. All right, so it's analyzed that first invoice. It searched for this first invoice already, right? And it's giving me information that it's extracted out from the page in Acme. All right, and so it's going to ask me, do you want to search for the second invoice? Yeah, go ahead and do that. All right, so it's now running the second invoice. In this particular automation, I'm just passing in as an argument the invoice number, which is inferred from the conversation. It's gone ahead. Now, as you can see, this invoice is missing from the Acme website. It's going to return that information back to the chat and then generate the information related to it. All right, it's going to give me some suggestions as to what I can do to follow up and whether or not I want to draft an email. Yeah, let's go ahead and draft an email. And then here it would just go ahead and infer the contents, summarize the information, and then I can send it off on my behalf to the vendor. All right. So in just a bit, we'll actually go into the admin. I'll show you how you can configure and customize specialized autopilots. Just wanted to walk you through some couple of use cases. I think this is really powerful. A lot of people have asked for it. Most people, when they're building Autopilot or using Autopilot for everyone, they're using specialized autopilots in one way or another. All right, so some quick recaps related to specialized autopilots. So this basically allows you to have multiple specialized use case specific autopilots in a single tenant, right? It allows you to configure starting prompts, the system prompt itself, or the instruction set, context grounding indexes, the automations, and certain advanced settings, which we'll walk through. You can switch between specialized autopilots mid-conversation, right? And just some caveats to keep in mind. When you create a specialized autopilot, it is restricted to a specific folder. So the folder itself needs to contain all of the context grounding indexes and automations you want to make available to it. And then if you want a user to have access to that specialized autopilot, you just add them to that folder. Uh, Additionally, for automations that you want to make available in a specialized autopilot, they first have to be available in the Autopilot for Everyone configuration. So the automation needs to be available to Autopilot for Everyone, and then you can turn them on or off for the specialized autopilot. All right. So we've gone through a lot of information. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat. We will get to that. I'll speed right through the admin portion of this session, and then we'll go ahead and jump into Q&A. So once again, if you want to configure Autopilot for everyone, you go into the admin section of Automation Cloud. Unfortunately, you do need org admin rights. We are working on providing access to users who are not org admins. You go into the AI trust layer, you click on Autopilot for everyone, and then you just select your tenant. Again, if this is your first time, you just go in here, make sure you have document understanding enabled, and you click install Autopilot. Here is the tenant that we were working in. As you can see, it's already been installed, so it recognizes Autopilot for everyone installed and starts populating the information. So you will always see this Autopilot for everyone tab here. This is the general purpose Autopilot for everyone that everyone will have access to. Here's the starting prompts you can configure here for that user. The starting prompts are configured per folder. So if you, let's say, you wanted to make sure users in the invoice processing group had access to a specific set of starting prompts, you would go in here, configure them, and only the users in that folder would see those starting prompts, right? So again, we follow the permissioning structures of the orchestrator very, very closely. Here is how you would enable context grounding indexes. So first, you need to go out and create the context grounding index, and then you go into Autopilot for everyone and you enable them. We need you to enable them because there might be instances where you want to create a context grounding index and you want to make them available throughout the platform, agents, workflows, but not to Autopilot for everyone. So the enablement of context grounding indexes is very explicit when it comes to Autopilot for everyone, outside of creating the index itself. And the important thing here is when you enable it, that you provide a description of what the context grounding index is or has inside. The reason being is because we provide this description to Autopilot for everyone, and that's how it decides when you type a query, whether or not it should search this index to answer the question. Here are the tools. So these are automations available to Autopilot for everyone. So you saw when I was running Autopilot for everyone, we had a bunch of automations here, data sources. Well, let's get out of. We had a bunch of automations that were data sources, as well as automations themselves, right? These are all out-of-the-box automations. So these are hosted on the marketplace, but you can click and install them directly from here. These are created by UiPath, published by UiPath. They're not third-party vendors or anything. And so if you want to learn more about them, you can click on the link. It'll take you out to the marketplace page where we host them. And you can learn more about the out-of-the-box automations. Okay, so there's over 100 out-of-the-box automations that you can use directly in Autopilot for everyone. And all you need to do is click install, and then they will be installed in the orchestrator under a new umbrella folder called tool automations. And then under each of those, and under that folder, you'll have a solution that's installed. All right, so here's the productivity automations that have been installed because I installed them from my admin. Okay. Here you have a configures tool. So this is actually where you configure your automations further. So each automation needs to be curated for Autopilot for everyone. It's because there's some metadata that's only conducive to LLMs. Basically, you have to describe the automation to the LLM, so it knows when to use it, as well as some additional information, such as the text always needs to be searched in English and always translates the search text to English, right? To turn on or off a automation for Autopilot, you select it right here. Because again, you might not want all your automations available to Autopilot. You want to be able to make sure that you've curated it, built it for Autopilot for everyone, and made sure it's ready for use before, let's say, enabling it. Uh, if you want to make it a data source, so again, we had two different sections, data sources. These are automations that are run automatically, and then the response is generated, or an automation that is displayed to the user, confirmed and run explicitly by the user. That's controlled by this toggle right here. So if you set something as pre-response, it will run before Autopilot responds, and then the response will be generated based upon its outputs. If I uncheck this, then it will display that automation to the user, ask them for confirmation before requiring the user press run to actually execute it. Here we have some output instructions. So this was widely requested by users. Um, by default, all automations, we give them the instruction to say, hey, summarize the output in a user-friendly way. Otherwise, everyone would just get JSON. And so here you have other ways to manipulate how the output is shown to the user. So to display it from a table, bulleted form, or display it exactly how I've provided it. Okay. And then last but not least is down here, all the arguments that relate to that automation. So this is important. You can do a lot of stuff here, but the important thing is the description to Autopilot, because this describes to Autopilot how it should infer or pre-populate the arguments at runtime, right? So each automation, the power of Autopilot for everyone is not only can it recommend automations for you, it can help you set up the automation with the arguments, but it needs to know how to set up these arguments. So the description to Autopilot is important. If you don't populate this, it would just try to do it through the name. So providing more information is usually better. All right, here's some advanced settings. Most of these settings were created in coordination with our customers. So I'll walk through them really quickly. Idle exit. So basically, if autopilot for everyone hasn't been used for a specific period of time, I want you to just exit autopilot for everyone. If you want to disable file uploads, so let's say you have a very locked down version of autopilot, you don't want people to upload files, you only want them to query some context ground indexes, you can disable file uploads. System prompt hints is actually where you would have provided instructions for autopilot for everyone before specialized autopilots. You can still do this, but we've kind of deprecated this feature in response to specialized autopilots. If you want to turn off the suggested prompts, so after every response, you get those three recommendations, right? If you want to turn those off, you can definitely do so. Let me show you what those look like. Yeah, so these suggested prompts, if you want to turn those off, you just need to disable this right here. Suggested prompt hints. So let's say if you kept them on and you wanted to say, always recommend a cooking recipe or something, right? Usually people don't put this. Usually they say something a little bit more business focused. But yeah, if you wanted to, let's say, influence what kind of prompt hints are shown, this is where you would do it. User notes. So remember how I showed you that you can configure user notes in here. If you wanted to disable this and hide this menu, you can do so here. Chat history limit. If you want to control how far back you can see chat history, you could do it here. This actually adheres to half days as well. So if I put 0.5, it would say that I could only see the chat history 12 hours back. Always search context grounding. So this is helpful for really performant use cases. So in the blood donor intake use case, I knew that every single time that I ask a question to this specialized autopilot, it's always just going to use that context grounding index. There's no other tools. There's no real other thing that the user is going to ask. You can go in here and actually say, hey, I want you to search this documentation every single time. And what it will do is remove that 3-second thinking phase, and it will just search the index, right? Because it doesn't need to think about what it should do. It should just always search the index. You can control the context surrounding chunks return back. So this is by default 5. If you have a PDF, it means that I'll return back the top 5 results. So here you can actually dictate it and maybe return back 10 or maybe return back 3, whatever is suitable for your needs. Next, pre-response actions. So sometimes if you ask Autopilot to do something, again, it could search up to 6 pre-response actions before returning back a response. And if you're asking for something and it doesn't really exist in your tool set, it could just run 6 times and give you a response that says, I couldn't find anything. Um, and what this does is impact performance a lot. So users might be waiting around for like 2 or 3 minutes before getting a response just for it to say, I couldn't find anything. For again, really highly performant use cases, you can lower this to 2 or let's say 3 and say, hey, I only want you to do 3 data source queries before stopping, right? And this allows you to kind of cap that upper bound of performance in your use cases. All the information or feedback that you use in chat right now, it's fairly restricted to what we get. But when you downvote something, it does log a Jira ticket on our end, so that we can just improve the product. If you don't want to send anything on to us at all, you can just disable this. We will still log telemetry, but you won't see a dialog. Nothing is going to get logged on our end. Here's the user acknowledgement. So if when users start up Autopilot for everyone, you want to display a message that says, hey, you need to make sure that you verify the answers before you use them in your business processes. You can click here and you can enable it as a header. We allow you to put a logo as well as the message itself, right? And then the text for the button. And last but not least, we have color themes. So you can put your logo in. It will appear here at the very top of Autopilot for everyone. You can just kind of append a title to this Autopilot for everyone tag, and then you can change the color here as well as the banner color. It's fairly restrictive. We're going to work on it for 2510. And then last but not least is our licensing settings. So we're going to go in licensing in just a bit, but each user that has a valid license, you get up to 50 free Autopilot for everyone actions, basically prompts per user per year. Afterwards, it will start consuming from your AI units, right? And then afterwards, you'll be limited in terms of what you can use. If you don't want it to consume from your AI units that you've allocated to your org or tenant, just click disable, and then we will basically block usage after that free and allotment. Okay. Here are those specialized autopilots that we saw, right? So in general, the name of the specialized autopilot, description, the folder that we've chosen to build it in, and here's the instructions related to that specialized autopilot. Okay. Um, Here is where I would configure starting prompts for that specialized autopilot, the context surrounding indexes, the tools, right? So again, the automation needs to already be enabled for autopilot for everyone. And then here you just basically turn them on or off. Okay. And then here's just some limited advanced settings that we took from Autopilot for everyone. So you can turn on or off suggested prompts. You can auto search the context around index, and then you can control the maximum number of pre-response actions. And here's the information for the other specialized autopilot. All right, that was quite a bit. So really quickly, before I jump into it, just wanted to talk about the licensing. So again, the license types that we have available: attended user, citizen developer, automation developer, and our express license types. That includes Autopilot Express, Automation Express, as well as the new express user license type. Um, the uh, the allotment that we give you again is 50 Autopilot actions per user per year. Okay. How that works is an action is basically a prompt or a Clipboard AI paste. There are some restrictions for just the Express license type because, again, they are free. You can only run personal workspace automations and out-of-the-box automations. I actually think the personal workspace automations capability might be removed and moved over to basic. That's something that we're working out with licensing right now. All right, I know we got 10 minutes left. I can probably go over a couple minutes, but let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Tuan. I feel like there were some valuable information on your Autopilot for Everyone presentation, but great presentation also raises some questions. I've noted them separately. Let's go through them in order. First question was from Parul Garg. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Can this be set as default, example, email reply settings for all Autopilot users, or will users have to set it individually themselves?
Let me see. Email reply settings. Mm, are you saying like the connection or like the how email responses are set up?
how the email responses are set up. So I wanted to just see how frictionless this would be for the autopilot users. There's so many chatbots that get thrown at them these days, right? So, we just want to see how frictionless we can make the implementation.
Yeah, usually the burden of what we call configuration is on the admin. So as you saw, you have to go into the admin and you have to install it. Before the friction on the end user was not high, but like a little bit tedious because they had to install the assistant and the robot. With Autopilot for Everyone Web, it's fairly seamless to go to the URL and access this. To your point, like how much can we configure individual tools for the users? You can do that fairly. You can do it's fairly granular because you can go into the admin as I mentioned, right? And let's say you can go into the tools configuration, and I could go into the Outlook tools. I can set the, let's say, email automation, right? Send an Outlook email. Where is it? I gotta look for it. But you would basically be able to schedule it, right? And then here, I'll just do schedule for now. And then in here, you can configure and say, I always want to include a user as an attendee or something, right? These are why like the prompt descriptions are important because they allow you to provide additional instructions as to like how these automations should be set up or utilized. You can adjust hard code information here as well. So like here, I can actually provide the attendees as well. But it really depends on your use case. You can instruct it in the automation or the tool itself or at the autopilot level. It depends on like how far you want to cascade down. All right.
Okay.
Let's see.
Next question was from Ansi. Can I use
Yep.
context grounding from Confluence pages, for example?
It's a good question. If you go into Orchestrator, it'll actually show you how you create a context ground index. So the way that most people I see utilizing it is through storage buckets, which are again an instance in time, right? But they're working on integrating in additional data sources. So if you go in here and you add an index, you'll see that you can, create index name. You can choose storage bucket or you can choose a connector, right? And here in the connection, I would have to set up but the ones that they support right now is Dropbox, Confluence, Google Drive, OneDrive, and SharePoint. I believe they're working on other things like Confluence through Atlassian, as well as Jira as well. And currently, I think right now this is still an instance in time, so it needs to like index all the information. But what they're looking to do is do a federated search, so it's more real time, where you don't have to convert all of them to PDF pages, or you don't have to do a snapshot. It'll either refresh on a periodic basis, or it'll have real time connections because it's working through, let's say, a search API on their end.
Okay, awesome. Another question from John. Are there ways via automation apps or other to be able to centrally govern against abuse, overuse, types of use certain data sources? Example, Google search.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We try to maintain all the governability in the AI trust layer. So, like, if you were to go in here, again, you could disable automations, right, for specific users or folders. So we try to follow the governance structure of what Creator already provides. So if you want a user to have access to a tool, then just add them to that folder. If not, like, they won't have access to that folder. Here you can actually audit all of like the calls that are made throughout the platform to any LLM-based product through the AI trust layer, right? And on top of that, if you're running an automation through Autopilot for Everyone, it still is an automation ran through our platform. So if you had automation ops policies that dictated like how automations should run, which activities should be utilized, it still adheres to that, right? So you have a lot of good guardrails that automations run through because we're not bypassing anything that you've already configured to adhere to the automation ops policy in our platform.
Thank you. We have the next question from Pamela saying, can you show us an example of that? At the time, I know you were on the topic of specialized autopilots, but I'm not sure
Sure.
what exactly the example had to be.
Yeah, I think at the point in time I had not gone through a specialized autopilot already. I think I went through that already. Pamela, please let me know if like there were other questions you had related to that.
No, I think I saw it when you were reviewing it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, okay, awesome. The next question was from Kavish. What is the AI model that Autopilot uses?
Yes. Autopilot for Everyone uses Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet V1, right? We're going to be upgrading it to 3.7, most likely in this month's release. So we work on a bi-monthly release cadence. So every 2 months, we'll be releasing a community version. And then with their LTS release, we'll have like a LTS release as well. Okay.
Okay. Next question was, do we need AI units to use Autopilot for everyone? I think we went through that.
You do after the 50 free action allotment. So every user gets 50 free actions as long as they have a valid license type, right? And after that, you have to allocate or and consume AI units. And then also if you're new as part of like the new unified pricing plan, they would be unified units at that point.
Thanks. Okay. We have 2 more questions in the chat now. If I upload an order document to get the details extracted via document understanding, how can I pass the extracted data to a tool automation which will eventually fill the data like the Acme use case you showed?
It's a good question. So what you're not seeing actually behind the scenes is that, when I upload a document and I ask it to analyze it, right? What it's basically doing is sending a document understanding, extracting all the text. If it's a really large document, it will then create a vector database, and then it will just return back chunks, right? But this is a fairly small document, so what it did is extract all the text and it just returned it back to context. If I go into like debug mode, you'll actually see all the information that's returned back to context, right? So here is all the information that was returned back from that statement, and then it actually returns it back and sends it as part of chat history to the LLM. So even though you can't see it, the LLM can see it, and that's still how it's able to like generate this response to you, right? And when it then passes it into the automation, we tell the LLM, basically Claude, hey, I want to run this automation. The arguments I need to run the automation is the invoice number. Can you look at the information you already have in the chat and see if you can find the invoice number? And because in the chat we already talked about the 2 invoices it needs to search for, then it knows, okay, we have already searched for invoice 417650. And the user is asking me to search for 420555. And so it infers that argument, passes it in, and then runs the automation.
Okay, and one last question that I see in the chat from Rohit, do we have integrations to read data from a SharePoint location?
Yeah, you can definitely do that through tool automation, as Kavish mentioned, right? We have a retrieve file from SharePoint, which you just need to set up a SharePoint connection for. In addition, you can create your own if you have a very specific way that you want to pull things. This is what we normally see people do. They have a very like standardized file that everyone updates, and so Autopilot's able to read from it and push data from it as well. Again, we do have also the context grounding index options to actually use SharePoint.
Okay, awesome. I see that we're almost done because the whole hour is over, so there's not really much time left for questions. Maybe if you have 1 or 2, you can send them in the chat. Until then, Tuan, since you're already presenting, may I please ask you to go back to the deck to our penultimate slide and invite people to join our future sessions. I'll also give you the links in the chat for that one. It's on Unified Developer Experience. Please join us again. And thanks everyone who had questions and feedback, and especially Tuan for doing a great presentation today.
Thank you everyone for your time. Thanks, Mihai, for moderating.
Of course.
See you soon.
Thanks. Bye, guys.